Hotel, everybody. Let me just check a few things, make sure everything is working properly. For y'all come in the building, welcome back though. Welcome back to another episode of Matthew Daniels TV. Just a second. How y'all doing though? How y'all doing? Is everybody doing okay? Just a second. All right, good. There we go. There we go. Um, I hope everybody is doing well. I hope everybody had a good weekend. And I appreciate you tapping back in. Real quick, before we get started, if you haven't already, make sure you like the video. If you're interested in the content, make sure you share the video. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and go ahead and do me a favor. Click that notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I go live or whenever I upload a new video to YouTube. That way you can keep up with the information in real time. But again, thank you guys for showing up. Now, Hotel, I'm your brother Matthew Daniels, aka the real bookworm. Now, I'm not just a bookworm world, I am the real bookworm. I'm doing the book game like it ain't never been done before, and I'm doing the book game like it'll probably never be done again. Y'all see the title of this one today. We're going to be talking about slave patrols and community policing, paddy rollers, and police officers. That's right, we're talking about slave patrols and community policing, paddy rollers, and police officers. We're continuing on with the theme of allowing the ancestors to speak. And what I'm going to do for you guys today, I'm going to show you guys that an aspect of what our ancestors dealt with during the time of their enslavement is unfortunately something that we're still dealing with today. Mama Jeets says grand rising to you as well. Thank you for tapping in. Good morning. We got us an early show, and I'm telling you, this one is going to be a good one. So if you can't be here for the entire show, make sure that you come back and finish this one because I'm going to be giving you guys a lot of information. As usual, I always try to overload you guys with information. So again, what we're going to be talking about is an aspect of our ancestors' enslavement that we're still dealing with right now today. So one thing that our ancestors had to endure during slavery is something that they call slave patrols. And these slave patrols were carried out and orchestrated by what they call the paddy rollers or patty rollers or pad rollers. They had various different forms of their name, but the concept was always the same. What we're talking about is individuals who patrolled the roads at night, mainly at night, but also during the day. But we're talking about individuals who patrolled the roads, and whenever they encountered one of our ancestors, whenever they encountered a black person, they would stop them, interrogate them, investigate them, demand that they showed them papers proving that they were supposed to be out and about at the time that they were. And if they were not able to present a pass, or if they were not able to answer the questions to the satisfaction of the paddy rollers, they were severely punished and taken back to the plantation that they left from. Y'all kids in the building says Grand Rising, the real bookworm. Hey, Grand Rising to you as well. Thank you for tapping in. This is gonna be a good one. I got a lot of information that I got in this PowerPoint. So, like I said earlier, if you can't watch the whole video, make sure you come back because I'm sure we're going to talk about some things that some of us may not have heard before. So again, now these slave patrols and these paddy rollers, a lot of it was on the books. It was claimed to be geared towards preventing our ancestors from escaping. What you have to understand is there was no point during the enslavement of our ancestors where all of our ancestors just sat back and accepted their fate. No, there were always rebellions, there was always revolts, there was always individuals fighting back, and there was always individuals trying to get free. There was always individuals trying to escape to freedom. And this was such a huge problem that the particular states in the South, I believe it started in South Carolina, what they did, they had to try and institute a program or institute a system that would deter our ancestors from trying to escape and capture the ones who were trying to escape, punish them for trying to escape, and take them back to the plantation where they came from. And this system that was created became known as the slave patrollers, and the individuals that carried out this system of looking for escaped slaves or trying to find slaves who were doing something that quote unquote they should not have been doing, or in a location where they should not have been. These individuals began to be known as the Paddy rollers. Now, the interesting thing is this concept of the slave patrol that our ancestors dealt with is um, basically akin to what they call community policing today from the police officers. And what they called the Paddy rollers back during the time of our ancestors' enslavement is comparable to police officers today. And I'm going to show you the comparisons. I'm going to show you the one for one that matches these things up. Now, you may have heard that before, but I'm going to show you exactly how it all lines up. And we're going to do this methodically, and we're going to go step by step. So the first question that we have to ask ourselves is, what is a slave patrol and what are Paddy rollers? Now, I just gave you guys a general understanding and some general definitions, but I always like to go to the documentation because, of course, a pair of lips can say anything. I don't want to just tell you guys. I want to show you and I want to prove it to you. So the first place we're going to start it is basic Wikipedia search. Now we're going to go deeper than Wikipedia because I know people don't like Wikipedia. I love Wikipedia, I'm not going to lie, but I'm going to show you some other sources. But let's just start here to get our feet wet. Now, a slave patrols, also known as pat rollers, patter rollers, patty rollers, or paddy rollers, were organized groups of armed men who monitored and enforced discipline upon slaves in the antebellum U.S. southern states. The slave patrol's function was to police slaves, especially those who escaped or were viewed as defiant. They also formed river patrols to prevent escape by boat. And so you see immediately right off the bat, these slave patrollers, they went by various forms of the name Paddy rollers. So you may see Paddy rollers, pat rollers, patter rollers, patty rollers, but they're all talking about the exact same thing. And these slave patrols were conducted on land because our ancestors escaped by foot, running through the woods, trying to make it to the north. And they escaped by boat. There were some boat captains who, for the right price, if our ancestors made it to the boat, they would stow them away on these particular boats, and they would carry them along the riverways from the south to some of the free states in the north, or some of the places where they weren't as harsh on the so-called African American or Negro population. So these slave patrols were on land, and they actually patrolled the rivers as well. Look, slave patrols were first established in South Carolina in 1704, and the idea spread throughout the colonies before their use ended following the Civil War. Slave patrols first began in South Carolina in 1704 and spread throughout the 13 colonies, lasting well beyond the American Revolution. As colonists enslaved more Africans and the population of enslaved people in South Carolina grew, especially with the invention of the cotton gin, so did the fear of slave uprisings. They developed slave patrols when other means of slave control failed to quell enslaved people's resistance. Their biggest concern was how to keep enslaved people on the plantations, being held against their will, since that is where enslaved populations were highest. Initially, slave owners offered incentives to the non-slave owning whites, such as tobacco and money, to urge them to be more vigilant in the capture of runaway slaves. When this approach failed, slave patrols were formally established. Legislators introduced laws that enlisted white people in the regulation of enslaved people's activities and movement. Black people were subjected to questioning, searches, and other harassment. Remember that because it's going to tie into how we're linking slave patrols with community policing and paddy rollers with police officers. Black people were subjected to questioning, searches, and other harassment. So basically, what they're saying is exactly what I told you in the beginning. There was never a time when our ancestors were not trying to get free. And so what they did at first, when they noticed that they would look up and overnight, many of their enslaved individuals that were on the plantations would try to escape over the night. When the slave owners began to realize this, the first thing that they did was they tried to get the non-slave holding whites, right? The individuals that lived in these states but did not own slaves, they tried to coerce them with tobacco and money and other things to encourage them to, hey man, if you see something, say something. If you see some of these enslaved Africans trying to escape the plantation, do something about it. Capture them for me, and I will pay you for it. But these non-slave holding whites, they did not do the job to the satisfaction of the slave owners, and our ancestors continued to escape to freedom. You're right, Yaya's kids. Nothing new under the sun. Facts. And so what happened was they had to institute legislation, change laws, put things on the books, and establish a more formal way to go after the escaped slaves. And this became what's known as the slave patrols. Now, what we're going to look at now is an explanation of this phenomenon that is located in the New Georgia Encyclopedia. And again, why I'm going there is for the people who they don't trust Wikipedia, they don't like Wikipedia. I'm going to show you various sources saying the exact same thing. So according to the New Georgia Encyclopedia, they say that beginning in 1757, Georgia's colonial assembly required white landowners and residents to serve as slave patrols, asserting that slave insurrections must be prevented. The legislators stipulated an act establishing and regulating of patrols that groups not exceeding 7 would work in districts 12 miles square. The statute, modeled on South Carolina's earlier patrol laws, ordered white adults to ride the roads at night, stopping all enslaved laborers they encountered and making them prove that they were engaged in lawful activities. Remember that. So basically, how they're saying it started in South Carolina and it spread to other states or other colonies, rather, because they technically weren't the United States of America yet, right? They spread to the other colonies inside of the Americas. And so they created laws to where they made it mandatory for the whites to group up into these slave patrols and these paddy roller groups and patrol at night to stop the slaves from escaping. Nothing they would try and work, so they had to make it a legal requirement of white adults to ride the roads at night. And they modeled this off of what they saw in South Carolina. Whites could hire substitutes to patrol for them, and absentees were fined, meaning that these paddy rollers, this was a forced through legislation type of group. And you're going to see how this eventually morphed into what we know as modern day police officers, and more recently this modern day form of community policing. Well, what you're seeing is the organization of a group of individuals whose sole reasoning for existing was to keep the enslaved population or the Negro population suppressed, right? Much of the burden of patrol duty fell to non-slave holders, who often resented what they sometimes saw as service to the planter class. The Chatham County grand jury complained in the mid 1790s about the difficulty it faced in enforcing the patrol requirement. By the early 19th century, it became necessary to pay people to perform what had been voluntary unpaid service. In 1819, Savannah City Watch received $1 for every evening they served and shared in any reward for the forced return of fugitives from slavery. So we see how this thing is beginning to develop. At first, they tried to just tell the non-slave holding whites, hey man, y'all need to help us keep our slaves under control and prevent them from escaping. And if you do, I'll pay you. These individuals, they didn't do it to the satisfaction of the slave owners. So the slave owners went to the legislators, and as we know, the money controls the politics. And so the individuals with the money had the legislators create laws that made it a legal requirement for people to patrol, to be involved in these paddy rollers and carry out the slave patrols. But even this, since they were forcibly coerced by law and they did not really want to do it, even this wasn't satisfactory. A lot of our ancestors were still escaping. So what had been a voluntary thing, which really wasn't voluntary, it was they were capitulated by law to do it. What they decided to do was, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to pay these paddy rollers to perform the slave patrols. And so they began to pay them. And what you have to understand is, not only did they pay them to go out on these slave patrols, they eventually started paying them like rewards or incentives or extra amounts of money when they actually captured a slave that was escaping, or they found a slave that was out with no past, or they actually had to beat a slave. Now, a lot of slave owners, they did not like the paddy rollers to extensively beat the slaves, because remember, they were property, and an individual that was beat too badly, they looked at that as being damaged goods, and it made it difficult for the slave owner to sell them off later, because of a slave trader saw a particular slave that was beaten extensively. They're going to think that this person is hard to control because they have rebelled a lot, so they may not be able to get a lot of money for it. But this did not stop the paddy rollers from being extremely heavy-handed on our ancestors. But we're seeing how this institution of these police officers is developing into an organized group that is being paid. And they began to pay them for the amount of work that they did. Now check this out. They say religious meetings were also a favorite haunt of patrollers because they provided opportunities for socializing that attracted enslaved congregants. After 1792, Georgia law protected religious assemblies from being disturbed, but enslaved and free African Americans could not gather under pretense of divine worship, contrary to the regulation of patrols. Paranoia over unrest after the St. Domingo, later Haiti, slave rebellion of 1791 led to a Savannah ordinance that no enslaved congregants could meet for religious services without a white preacher present. So they began to get so heavy-handed with these slave patrols that even groups of a religious setting were targeted. If our ancestors were out trying to praise God, the paddy rollers would show up. They would question them, investigate them, beat them, and they would make the gathering disperse. Why? Because a lot of these gatherings, yes, they were gathering for religious purposes, but a lot of these gatherings, they were talking about freedom. They were talking about how to get free. They were exchanging information on the road to take to get to the north. They were discussing things like the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad has been around for an extremely long time. And they were gathering and coordinating slave revolts and slave rebellions. Never let somebody tell you that there was a time during our enslavement when our ancestors weren't fighting back. That's just a lie. They were fighting back and rebelling and revolting and running away the entire time. And this is evident in the laws that you see being established. They had to continually create new laws because there were new ways in which our ancestors were using and utilizing to try to get free. So it became so bad that blacks could not even practice their religion without being harassed by these paddy rollers. And so and so this situation led to the paddy rollers or the slave patrollers getting more and more authority over our ancestors when they encountered them. Because the problem of the escaping and the problem of the revolts and the rebellions, it was so extensive, they were allowed to become more and more heavy-handed, even to the point to where they were beginning to be allowed to kill our ancestors if they caught them engaged in activities that these paddy rollers deemed were not legal. Okay. Now look, check this out. Now we're still in the New Georgia Encyclopedia. Look, slave patrols had the legal right to enter without warrant the plantation grounds of any Georgian. They often searched quarters and homes of enslaved people looking for stolen goods, fugitives from slavery, weapons that could be used in an insurrection, or evidence of literacy and education, including books, papers, and pens. Teaching enslaved people to read was forbidden by Georgia law in the antebellum period. So, yes, it was even illegal for our ancestors to have things that looked like they were literate or educated, including books, papers, and pens. Sometimes when these paddy rollers would bust into these houses, break into these houses, kick down the doors of these houses of our enslaved ancestors, and they found things like books, papers, and pens, our ancestors were punished. Yaya kids say Georgia, Fannie Willis and Nathan Wade, RICO charges in Cop City. Just thinking out loud. Yes, yes, yes. A lot of this stuff that happened in the past, it translates into things that are going on right now. It's the exact same thing. But what I want to point out about this real quick, about the books, papers, and pens being illegal. A lot of us have heard the term Uncle Tom. Now, in more recent years, we have all been taught that Uncle Tom is not what we think. Most of the time, when someone calls someone an Uncle Tom, they think that they're saying like a derogatory phrase. Oh, you Uncle Tom, as in the Uncle Tom is supposed in our minds to have been someone who was a sellout to his race on behalf of the Europeans and the slave owners. But that's not true. Uncle Tom in the original literature was actually rebellious. And there's a story that I found in the Underground Railroad records where an individual was sentenced to 10 years in the penitentiary for having a copy of the book Uncle Tom's Cabin. Imagine that. He had a copy of Uncle Tom's Cabin, the book, and he was sentenced to 10 years in the penitentiary just for having that. But anyway, they go on to say the responsibilities of city patrollers occasionally merged with those associated with modern day policemen and firemen. I'm gonna read that again because this is not my words. This is not Wikipedia. This is the New Georgia Encyclopedia where they're describing what slave patrols and paddy rollers are. They make the connection for you. The responsibilities of city patrollers occasionally merged with those associated with modern day policemen and firemen. Patrollers investigated strange circumstances, moving lights in a warehouse at night, rowdy gatherings in drunken dens, anyone who quote unquote acted suspiciously. Indeed, urban patrollers preceded, that means came before, indeed, urban patrollers preceded the advent of city policemen and firemen forces in virtually every southern town. So what we're looking at, this creation of these slave patrols and the creation of these paddy rollers preceded the advent of city policemen. And the things that the Paddy rollers and the slave patrols did, that job was taken over by the city policemen and the firemen. But right now we're highlighting the policemen. We're showing how it developed. One became the other. And you're going to see as we move along that the attitude of a lot of the policemen, even right now today in these modern times, are the exact same attitude of these slave patrollers. I mean, just look, rowdy gatherings and drunken dens. When you're out at the club and you know it's they're making a lot of noise, and someone calls, hey, it's a gathering over here, they're making a lot of noise, it's a block party in my neighborhood, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of cars, nobody's violating any laws, there's no violating any laws, but there's just a gathering that somebody feels offended by, and they call the police. What do the police do? The police show up, they pull up in their vehicles, they jump out, and what do? They start investigating people and questioning people. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why are you here? What are you doing? And they try to disperse the gatherings. Remember, the slave patrollers or the Paddy rollers, whenever the quote unquote enslaved would have a gathering, even if the gathering was at church, that's how extreme it was, any type of gathering. If there were so many of them together in one location, the Paddy rollers would show up and they would question them. Hey, what's your name? Where did you come from? What plantation are you from? Oh, what are you doing here? What prove that you're doing something? You have to prove that you're doing something legal. Now, they tell us that you are innocent until proven guilty, but anybody that has ever dealt with law enforcement, you know that's not true on the actual streets. Right? In the streets, you are guilty until proven innocent. You have to prove that you have not done anything wrong, or that they may just take you to jail. How many times have you been just walking down the street? You got in the middle of the night, you got pulled over by some cops. They jump out. What's the first thing they do? Hey, where you coming from? What's your name? What are you doing on this part of town? Hey, put your hands on the hood of the car. And they want to pat you down. They want to frisk you. They want to search you. The same thing that the Paddy rollers did. The Paddy rollers and the slave patrols, they would just patrol the streets at night. Whenever they would see anybody black, they would just pull up on them and do the same thing. Hey, you, boy, what's your name? Where are you coming from? What plantation do you belong to? What's your business being out here at the middle of the night? Do you have any weapons on you? Do you have any books, any papers, any pens? Let me pat you down. Let me search you. And if you have anything that they deem is illegal, they're going to punish you. They're going to beat you, and they're going to haul you back off to wherever you're supposed to be, or they're going to turn you over to the justice of the peace. Just like what the cops are going to do today. If they don't like the answers that you give, you can get tased, you can get maced, you can get beat with the billy club, or you can be shot down, gunned down in the street. And even after all of the investigations, the police officers, they're still going to walk free. So remember, according to the New Georgia Encyclopedia, the responsibilities of city patrollers occasionally merge with those associated with modern day policemen and firemen. It's a 1-for-1. The same thing that our ancestors endured with the slave patrols and the Paddy rollers, we endure with community policing and police officers. Now check this out. They say, although slave patrols ceased to function after the Civil War, they provided the blueprint for later activities of the Ku Klux Klan, a new means by which the white community sought to control the activities of freedmen and free women during Reconstruction, showing that even after the Civil War, even after the Emancipation Proclamation, now technically slave patrols ceased to exist under the name of slave patrols because why? Technically, the black people were not slaves anymore. Slavery was illegal. So it morphed into other groups and other organizations who served the same purpose. What purpose? Oppressing the black population. Now, this is when the Ku Klux Klan originated. It originated after the Civil War during the period of Reconstruction. And when you hear a lot of the horror stories of the Ku Klux Klan, bombing African American cities, burning crosses on people's yards, going inside of people's houses, dragging them out, hanging them, beating them, burning them, killing them, torturing them, hounding them. When you hear these stories, the Ku Klux Klan was really only doing what the Paddy rollers were already doing. They just continued the practice, and they continued the practice under a different name. And today, that practice is carried out under community policing. I'm going to show you that. But in order to, you can see how this article is cited at the bottom of this particular page, showing that I did get this information about slave patrols from the New Georgia Encyclopedia. That's for the individuals that don't like Wikipedia. And I started with Wikipedia. I like to try to cover all of my bases so people don't come into the comments telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about. Now, what I want to do right now, just for historical context and to give you guys more information, what you're seeing on your screen is an actual warrant ordering a slave patrol in Loudoun County. Now, why is it important that I show you guys this? Because not only am I going to tell you verbally about slave patrols and Paddy rollers, not only am I going to show you the evidence in Wikipedia, not only am I going to show you them talking about it in the New Georgia Encyclopedia, I want to show you some actual historical documents relevant to the topic. Check this out. This warrant, dated September 2nd, 1826, calls for the creation of a patrol in Loudoun County to address the unlawful assembly of slaves and other parties, which are rumored to be frequently held in this neighborhood. The Justice of the Peace of Loudoun County addressed the warrant to a specific group of men, all called upon to join the patrol. The cover of the manuscript, where an address would usually be found, is labeled Warrant for a Patrol. The manuscript is unsigned. So basically what you're seeing is they ordered that some Paddy rollers and a slave patrol be organized in this particular area because there were frequent unlawful assemblies of slaves held in this neighborhood. So so what you kind of have is like snitching, right? You have Negroes meeting in an area. Now, we don't even know what they meeting for. They could have just been going to church. They could have just been going to church. But you have frequent meetings of Negroes in this place, Loudoun County. And so you see how I say, which are rumored to be frequently held in this neighborhood. Use your thinking cap. If it's rumored that they're frequently having unlawful assemblies in this neighborhood, someone told them this. So in today's logic, you have someone getting on the phone, 911. Hey, 911, man, look, every Saturday, they hanging out on this particular block. Every Saturday, it's a lot of them. They out here hanging out on this particular block. The music is loud. The cars are driving around. People are out. They look like they're partying and whatnot. But hey, I just don't like these large gatherings of people in the neighborhood. And so what are they going to do after they receive so many of these complaints? The police are going to be like, all right, look, next Saturday, you and you, I want y'all to get in y'all patrol cars. I want y'all to go over there to that area, find out what's going on. Stop them, get out, talk to them, ask their names, ask what are they doing there, where are they coming from, what side of town are you from, why are you on this particular side of town, and they are going to have to prove that they're doing something legal, right? This is exactly how the slave patrols and the Paddy rollers conducted themselves. Hotel Brooklyn Zoo, good to see you, brother. Good morning, man. So look, now check this out. What we're going to do now, since this is it's in cursive, it is kind of hard to make out. But what we're going to do, we're going to struggle through this to try to read some of this warrant so you guys can see exactly what this looks like in the historical record, not just what Wikipedia or the Georgia New Encyclopedia is telling us. I want you guys to see what one of these warrants to create a slave patrol looked like. So at the top it says Loudoun County, to Thomas something something. Now this first part is just a lot of names. Now I can't really read every name. It's harder to read a name because they're not all regular words. The person could be named anything, but we see two Thomas, we see Joseph Van Peel, Nelson Wilson, Hezekiah Ellis. I can't really read those names, but basically they're writing to the people that they want to conduct this particular slave patrol. So look what the warrant says. Where my hand is at. Whereas information has been given to me, something justice of the peace for the county, something that unlawful assembly of slaves. So probably he's basically saying that information has been given to the justice of the peace for the county of Loudoun that unlawful assembly of slaves and other persons are frequently held in this neighborhood, contrary to the act of assembly in such case, made and provided. So remember, I told you guys they had made laws on the line on the line on the line to the cyber police back in the day. Yeah, they reached out to the justice of the peace, man. So basically what he's saying is they had put laws on the books that Negroes couldn't assemble, not even for church. And so there were multiple frequent assemblies in this particular neighborhood. So they contacted justice of the peace, and in response, the justice of police are saying that the Paddy rollers need to organize slave patrols in this neighborhood, and if they catch these people assembling unlawfully, they are to disperse the gathering. So look, he says, these are therefore to require you to patrol. So they're ordering by warrant the men mentioned at the beginning of this warrant to patrol this area because of these unlawful gatherings. Look, these are therefore to require you to patrol the said neighborhood and to search for and apprehend all disorderly persons who have been arrested for disorderly conduct, disorderly persons, and bring them before me or some other justice of the peace to be dealt with as the law directs, and further to report your proceedings to the next court to be held for this county. And they give you the date that this was issued, the second day of September 1826. So they are organizing a slave patrol to search for and apprehend all disorderly persons who are meeting in this particular area, right? And so that is a actual warrant for the creation of a slave patrol, and that's how it went. That's how it went. If someone said that there were individuals hanging out in this area and they were hanging out there and they were not supposed to be hanging out there, then here come the slave patrollers, here come the Paddy rollers. And the Paddy rollers were given power by the county, by the justice of the peace, basically the chief of police or whatever, the sheriff, to execute judgment on those individuals who were violating those rules. Now, what I want to do real quick is and following with the theme of allowing the ancestors to speak. We're going to talk about an ancestor who dealt with these slave patrols and these paddy rollers firsthand, right? Now, this is from the Georgia slave narratives, and this is ancestor Marshall Butler. Now, this guy actually dealt with the paddy rollers in real life. So we're going to hear how he talks about the paddy rollers and the slave patrols, and we're going to verify if all of this information that I'm giving you guys so far is right and correct. Now, he says, I is Marshall Butler, 88 years old, and was born on December 25th. I knows it was Christmas Day, for I was a gift to my folks. So basically, this guy was born on December 25th. He was 88 years old at the time of this interview, and these interviews was held around 1937. And so he says he know for sure that he was born on Christmas Day because his parents always told him that he was a gift to them, or at the very least his mother always told him that he was a gift to them, given to them on Christmas Day. He says, my mammy, I think I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so maybe y'all can read along with me. My mammy was Harriet Butler and my pappy was John Butler, and we all was raised in Washington Wilkes. Mammy was a Frank collar nigga, and her man was of the tribe of being Butler. He's basically talking about the plantation that his parents lived on. His mother was on the Frank Collar plantation, and his father was on the Ben Butler plantation, some miles down the road. Now look what he says. It was one of them trial marriages. They's tried so hard to see each other, but old Ben Butler says 2 passes a week were enough to see my mammy on the Collar plantation. So why am I highlighting that? I'm highlighting that because we already saw earlier that one of the first things that these paddy rollers would ask during these slave patrols when they encountered one of our ancestors on the road, they would ask to see their past. Now, any black person who was on the roads and not on their particular plantation, they had to have a pass. Now, these passes stated what plantation they belonged to, the reason that they were off of the plantation and on the road in the middle of the night, and it was there was a date saying how long the pass was good for. Now, this was the first thing that the paddy rollers would ask for. Hey, nigga, let me see your pass. They had to prove that what they were doing was not illegal. So if they saw him, they was definitely asking for a pass. And so I highlighted that because that goes right in line with the information that we already heard. He's saying that his mother was on one plantation, his father was on another plantation, and they needed passes to see each other. And they wanted to see each other more often than they did, but the individual man that owned her father only would write his father 2 passes a week to go and see his mother on the Collar plantation. So and without a pass, his father was not allowed to go to the other plantation to see his mother. And if he tried to, he would definitely be beaten. So this guy, he gives us a lot more information about slavery and a lot more information about his life during slavery in this particular slave narrative. But we're going to skip ahead so we can get more information on the paddy rollers, since this is the topic of the discussion. Look, he says, we sure frolicked Saturday nights. That was our day to howl, and we howled. Our gals sure could dance, and when we was thirsty, we had lemonade and whiskey. No, sir, we never mixed whiskey with no water. Something, something, wanted lemonade, got it. The gals all liked it. Niggers never got drunk those days. We was scared of the paddle rollers. Now, he's calling them paddle rollers, but remember, there's various names for it. Paddle rollers, paddy rollers, patter rollers, pad rollers. They're all the same thing. and swell music. So he's saying that they never got drunk and they never got too rambunctious when they was frolicking on these Saturday nights because everybody was scared of the Paddy rollers. Because the Paddy rollers would show up, remember, whenever there was any kind of gatherings of the African Americans, and they would question them. What are you doing? Where you at? Where you coming from? What plantation did you come from? What plantation do you belong to? Where are you going? And if they didn't like the answers that they were getting, then they would whip, beat, and sometimes kill. Not a lot, but they would sometimes kill the individual that they were investigating. And so we see this ancestor is talking about the passive, and he's talking about that they never wanted to get too out of control at these gatherings because they were scared of the Paddy rollers. Just like today, when individuals are hanging out, they a lot of people they're not going to go too far with their fun. They're going to limit the amount of fun, even if it's legal. They're going to limit the amount of fun that they're going to have because they are ultimately scared of the police, and they know that the police may show up and violate all kind of laws, to terrorize an individual. So look, now check this out. He actually has an encounter with a Paddy roller in his particular lifetime, and this is what I was leading up to, so we can get a first-hand account of the Paddy rollers in action. The ancestor says, if we went visiting, we had to have a pass. If nigger went out without a pass, the paddle rollers would get him. The white folks were the paddle rollers and had masks on their faces. They looked like niggers with the devil in their eyes. They used no paddles, nothing but straps with the belt buckle fastened on. Yes, sir, I got paddled. It happened this way. So he's going to tell us a first-hand account of how he was beaten by the Paddy rollers. I was left home one Thursday to see a gal on the Palmer plantation, 5 miles away. Some gal. No, I didn't get a pass. The boss was so busy. Everything was fine until my return trip. I was 2 miles out and 3 miles to go. There come the paddle rollers. I was not scared, only I couldn't move. They give me 30 licks. I ran the rest of the way home. There was belt buckles all over me. I ate my victuals off the porch railing. Some gal, was worth that paddling to see that gal. Would do it over again to see Mary the next night. So what he's saying is there was some girl that he liked on the Palmer plantation, and the slave owner, or maybe perhaps the overseer, because he says the boss was so busy that he couldn't approach them to get a pass to go see this girl. But he had such strong feelings for her, he was like, F it. One Thursday, he just snuck off and he went to the Palmer plantation so he could hang out with this girl. And we all know how we go. A man would do almost anything to get into the arms of a woman, and a woman would do almost anything to get into the arms of a man. We'll violate all kind of rules and laws to make it happen. So this is what he did, common human behavior. And so he say everything was good. He made it to the Palmer plantation. He didn't get caught. He hung out with the girl. And so when he was leaving on his return trip, he still had about 3 miles before he made it back to his plantation. And while he was out, boom, here come the Paddy rollers, the slave patrollers. They caught him. Obviously, when they caught him, they asked for his pass immediately. He didn't have a pass. So what did they do? They gave him 30 licks. And they gave him 30 licks with a belt buckle, but they hit him with the metal belt buckle part. They hit him 30 times. And he says that he had belt buckles all over him. So he had all kinds of whelps on him. But in kind of a lighthearted fashion, he says that the girl was worth it. And he'll do it over again and again to see her. So even if he had to get beat, he was willing to get beat. So obviously this was some kind of girl. Hey, what's going the Red Dogs and the Jump Out Boys in Atlanta? Man, yeah, the Jump Out Boys, I believe that's in every single city because we had them in our city too. And it was basically like I think it was I ain't been in the streets in a long time, but it was like Tuesdays and Thursdays that individual said, the Jump Out Boys would be riding around. And they'll just be riding around, they catch you hanging out, they jumping out, they chasing everybody, trying to find somebody to take to jail. Uh L Bigfoot Hotel family, thanks for entering the chat. Grand Rising to you too. Grand Rising to you too, family. And so we see a first-hand account of our ancestor dealing with these paddy rollers. So we know 100% that this phenomenon was real. And I'm saying all of this because I want you guys to get an understanding of just how the paddy rollers operated and exactly how these slave patrols operated. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how the slave patrols is modern day community policing and how the paddy rollers are modern day police. Okay, I'm going to show you the same exact tactic. Now, you notice how they keep talking about you had to have a pass, right? A pass permitting the enslaved individual to go from one place to another. Well, they actually have some of these passes that still exist today, giving us a visual, an archaeological record of what these passes look like. Now, this particular handwritten pass, dated June 1st, 1843, permits the enslaved man Benjamin McDaniel to travel from Montpelier, the Orange County plantation, then owned by Dolly Madison, to the town of New Market in Shenandoah County. Enslaved people had to carry a pass or tag, giving them permission to travel outside the plantation where they lived. If stopped and found to be without such a formal pass or tag, they were subject to arrest. Now, these passes would say where you're coming from and what's your reasoning for being in the area that you are in, which is exactly how the police treat you right now today. They want to know where you're coming from and why you're in the area that they're in. Like, I'm from a place called Texas City. A few cities up the road is a city called League City. If I get pulled over in League City, they ask for my ID. I show them my ID. Almost guaranteed they're going to see that I'm from Texas City, and they're going to ask me, "Hey, well, what are you doing in League City? Right? What are you doing?" I don't necessarily have to have a pass from nobody because this type of slavery has ended. They're going to be looking for some type of legitimate explanation for what I'm doing in League City. So when we look at a close-up of this pass, I know it's kind of blurry, but let's just see if we can make some of it out. It says, "Please do let Benjamin McDaniel pass to Dr. Heichels in New Market, Shenandoah County, something, and return on Monday or Tuesday night to Montpelier for Mr. Madison," and it gives the date. So we see just like in this archaeological record, it's just like what all the information has been telling us. It will give the name of the enslaved person. It will give where they're going and why, where they're coming from, and the name of the individual that owns them and when they were supposed to return in a day. Bigfoot says they still popping out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Man, that's crazy, man. Hey, some things will never change, right? Some things will never change. So, all of that information considered about the slave patrols and the paddy rollers, we're going to ask the question, why am I connecting paddy rollers with police officers? Why am I saying that slave patrols is community policing? And why am I saying that paddy rollers are police officers? Why am I going into that? Now, first of all, I'm saying that because this is exactly what the information and the historical record tells us. Remember the slide I showed you guys from the New Georgia Encyclopedia. They said, not me, the responsibilities of city patrollers, the slave patrollers, the paddy rollers, occasionally merged with those associated with modern day policemen and firemen. Patrollers investigated strange circumstances, moving lights in a warehouse at night, rowdy gatherings and drinking dens, anyone who acted suspiciously. You look suspicious in the neighborhood, you walking down the street with a hoodie on, someone is liable to call the cops on you and say, hey, I don't think this person belongs in my neighborhood. They acting suspicious. Who shows up? The cops show up and they question you. Indeed, urban patrollers preceded the advent of city policemen and firemen forces in virtually every southern town. So in virtually every southern town, these slave patrols and paddy rollers morphed into what we see as the police force. Now, remember what I showed you guys how the after the end of the Civil War, slavery technically on paper became illegal. So other groups sprung up, such as like the KKK, a white supremacist organization. Now the KKK, the white supremacist organization, was the paddy rollers and the slave patrols under a different name. And they harassed and oppressed the African American community just like the slave patrollers did as well. Now, a few years back, the FBI admitted that that local law enforcement, they said that local law enforcement, police departments across America were infiltrated by white supremacists and militias. Now, I appreciate that truth and I appreciate them giving up that information, but what we're really seeing is technically they weren't infiltrated by these groups. These groups were already there, right? They've been there from the beginning. And what's more likely is the quote unquote good cop. The good cops infiltrated the white supremacist organizations that became the police organization. You understand what I'm saying? It wasn't like it was all good cops and then the white supremacists began to infiltrate the all good cops. No, the police officers were the KKK, they were the slave patrols, they were the paddy rollers, and then as time went on, the quote-unquote good cops, the non-white supremacists, infiltrated the police department. But I appreciate them putting that information out there. A headline on The Guardian read, white supremacists and militias have infiltrated police across the U.S., report says. A former FBI agent has documented links between serving officers and racist militant activities in more than a dozen states. White supremacist groups have infiltrated U.S. law enforcement agencies in every region of the country over the last 2 decades, according to a new report about the ties between police and far-right vigilante groups. In a timely new analysis, Michael German, a former FBI special agent who has written extensively on the ways that U.S. law enforcement have failed to respond to far-right domestic terror threats, concludes that U.S. law enforcement officials have been tied to racist militant activities in more than a dozen states since 2000. And hundreds of police officers have been caught posting racist and bigoted social media content. The report notes that over the years, police links to militias and white supremacist groups have been uncovered in states including Alabama. Now, this is all interesting, but it did not begin in 2000. Okay, it did not begin in 2000. The police, the modern policing that we know, started as white supremacists, paddy rollers, and slave patrols. Those were white supremacists because they were oppressing the enslaved population. So it began as a white supremacist group. And when the Civil War ended, you could really no longer call it a slave patrol, but they began to call themselves the Ku Klux Klan. And these white supremacists and these Ku Klux Klan became the police department. And that is why they do the exact same thing to the public that the paddy rollers and the slave patrols did to the public. The exact same thing. Why? Because it's the exact same institution. Just the same institution under a different name. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at what is community policing and why am I connecting community policing with the slave patrols. Remember, I'm taking you guys step by step by step. All you have to do is walk with me and you will see I'm proving everything that I'm saying every step of the way. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is history. This is history. Listen, community policing or community-oriented policing is a strategy of policing that focuses on developing relationships with community members. It is a philosophy of full-service policing that is highly personal, where an officer patrols the same area for an extended time and develops a partnership with citizens to collaboratively identify and solve problems. The goal is for police to build relationships with the community, at times through mediums such as local agencies to reduce antisocial behavior and low-level crime. Some scholarship, such as the broken windows theory, proposes that community policing can reduce serious crimes as well. Now, follow me on this. Community policing, why they call it that, is because they're talking about police officers who work like they are assigned to specific communities. And these officers that are assigned to these specific communities are supposed to work here for an extended period of time so that they can build a relationship with the individuals in this community. Now, from this relationship that they have built with the individuals in this community, they can receive information from these individuals in this community about things that are going on in this community that they believe is illegal, so the police officers know who to target, what places to target, and when to target those areas. Remember the warrant that I showed you guys. They said that it had been rumored, right? It had been rumored that there was frequent gatherings in a particular neighborhood. So they called for the creation of slave patrols that would go to that community, that neighborhood, patrol that neighborhood for an extended period of time, find these people who were unlawfully assembling and deal with them. Community policing. These slave patrols, they didn't wander all around through every state and through every neighborhood. They patrolled what they were told to patrol. That's why they had to have a warrant to create a slave patrol in that particular area. There were slave patrols in other areas. You notice they didn't get one of the slave patrols from another area to go to this particular neighborhood and patrol. No, they organized a slave patrol and Paddy rollers in that area. Community policing, neighborhood policing, right? That is basically what you are seeing. A big part of community policing is to get the community to tell law enforcement what they see when the police aren't around. Hey, over here on such and such street, there's a red house. I don't know what's going on, but at that red house, there's always a lot of people. There's always multiple cars pulling in and out of the driveway. And so now the cops who are involved in community policing in that area, they have a specific point of focus based on the information that they got from the people in the neighborhood. They're going to start watching that house inconspicuously. They're going to be looking at that street, looking at that house, taking down the license plate number of the cars that come and go, getting descriptions of the individuals that they see approaching that house, do research to find out who these people are. They are even going to, when they see an individual leaving from that house, this is what they do. when they see an individual leaving from that house, they're going to let them get several blocks away. Then they're going to pull them over. They're not going to tell them that they're pulling them over because they left that house, because they're still doing their investigation. But they're going to pull them over for speeding, not using their blinker, music being too loud. And then, but just so they can do their investigation. Hey, what's going on? License and insurance, so they can get your name, so they can get your address. Hey, so what brings you here? Well, I see you're from Galveston, but you're in Texas City. Hey, what are you doing here? Where were you going? Do you mind if I search the vehicle? Right? And if there's an individual that has walked up to that house and has left walking, they're going to pull them over. They're going to do the exact same thing. Do you have any weapons on you? Any sharp objects? You mind if I pat you down real quick to ensure that you don't have any weapons or any drugs or any illegal substances on you? At that point, when you are approached by these officers, you are guilty until proven innocent. You have to prove that you are doing something legal. Just like when you had these slave patrollers and the paddy rollers, anybody black they saw, they would stop them and they would question them, and they would have to prove that what they were doing was legal. They would have to present their passes, explain what their name is, where they're coming from, where they're going, what they're doing in this area. And if the paddy rollers aren't satisfied with the answers, they get punished. If the cops aren't satisfied with your answers, what happened? You get beat, you get maced, you get tased, you get hauled off to jail. And they will literally make up a crime. Disorderly conduct, refusal to ID, obstruction of justice. They'll make something up just to take you to jail, right? Just to punish you. So this community policing is the slave patrol. You have to understand that. Now, check this out. In New York, now I'm going to start with New York because this is where it was most popular at. They had a big lawsuit, a big hoopla about a policy called stop and frisk. Now, this stop and frisk policy in New York was a policy enacted with the idea of community policing. Because see, the community policing presents itself as, hey, we just want to interact with the community. We want to make ourselves known to the community, and it's just so we can stop crime. We want to be the good guys. But that's not enough. What they really want to do with the community policing is the same thing that the paddy rollers did with the slave patrols. So they instituted something that they called stop and frisk. Not only are they just going to interact with the community, they wanted to be able to, anybody that they see for any reason, they wanted to be able to stop you, ask your name, ask where you're going, pat you down, go in your pockets. They wanted to do all of that so they could find a reason to arrest you. That's why they call it stop and frisk, because technically it's unconstitutional to detain an individual who has not committed a crime. It's unlawful if you don't have a warrant. It's unconstitutional without a warrant to go through the personal belongings of an individual. So they had to find a way to subvert that. See, back in slavery days, you didn't have any rights. So they could just go through your pockets, they could question you, they could stop, frisk, beat you, they could do any of that because the slave had no rights. But once slavery ended and our ancestors began to push legislation on their own, it became illegal to do the job that the paddy rollers did outright. So they had to come up with a diabolical way to treat you like the paddy rollers treated the enslaved, right? And what they did this with this stop and frisk. With this stop and frisk, it became legal now. They tried to make it seem constitutional to detain you whether or not you committed a crime, and without a warrant to go through your personal belongings, go in your pockets, right? Whether you committed a crime or not. So look, the stop, question, and frisk program, or stop and frisk in New York, is a New York City Police Department practice of temporarily detaining. You can't detain. It's unconstitutional for them to detain you. Detaining questioning and at times searching civilians and suspects on the street for weapons and other contraband. This is what is known in other places in the United States as the Terry stop. The rules for the policy are contained in the state's criminal procedure law, section 140.50, and based on the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court in the case of Terry v. Ohio. Now, just like in the days of slavery, with the slave patrols and the paddy rollers, remember I told you in the very beginning, before the slave patrols were created, they had a problem of slaves escaping the plantation. They didn't want slaves to escape slavery. So they first tried to tell the non-slave holding whites, hey, y'all need to be more proactive in helping me keep my slaves. That didn't work. So what did they do? The people with money and influence, they went to the legislators and they had laws written on the books which coerced the non-slave holding population to stop African Americans and question them about where they're going. Now, while they were being coerced, this still didn't go over too well because some people, they just didn't want to do it. So they decided to start paying them in order to do it. So just like now, even with the whole community policing, you see the same steps. They talk about community policing and they say that, hey, they just want to be interactive with the community. Hey, community, we don't want these people doing anything that they want to do. They getting too wild and free and they enjoying their rights a little too much. Why don't you help me, right? Why don't you help the police do the job of the police by telling on anybody you quote unquote think looks suspicious? Anybody that you've never seen in the neighborhood before, hey, how about you give us a call? Any house that seems to be doing something that they shouldn't be doing, hey, how about you give us a call? But they also have the paid paddy rollers, the cops, who are paid to do it. And not only are they paid to do it, see, that's not the only thing that the police officers do. But since they wanted a specific segment of the police to do exactly what the paddy rollers do, they had to create a system that was akin to slave patrols. And that system that's akin to slave patrols is the community policing. So now from these paid cops, what we're going to do, we're going to create groups of community policing, quote unquote, and we're going to assign officers to certain areas, just like they assign individuals to certain areas to do slave patrols. We're going to assign certain cops to certain areas to do the community policing, right? And not only are you going to do the community policing, not only are you going to focus your policing on this particular community, you're also going to stop, question, and frisk and pat down anybody that you want. The slave patrols, you're not just going to ride around at night, you're also going to stop anybody that you see, demand a pass, question them where they're coming from, where they're going, right? You're going to punish them if you don't like the answers that they give. You're going to pat them down to make sure that they don't have any weapons. Remember what the paddy rollers did. They would look for individuals that had anything illegal, any kind of contraband. If they had any kind of weapons in their houses that could be used for a slave revolt, if they had anything that looked like they were trying to learn how to read and write, if you had a book, if you had a pen, if you had a pencil, right? The paddy rollers would beat you. If you have something that they deem illegal, the police with this community policing and the stop and frisk would punish you, beat you, mace you, beat you up, kill you, haul you off to jail. The exact same thing. Look, in 2016, a reported 12,404 stops were made under the stop and frisk program. Now, these are random. This is not you commit a crime and I'm responding to a crime. This is just the cops just want to stop you like the paddy rollers want to stop you. Plain and simple. Look, the program also became the subject of a racial profiling controversy. 90% of those stopped in 2017 were African American or Latino, mostly aged 14 to 24. So 90% of the individuals stopped in 2017 were African American or Latino. Now dig these blues. In New York, there's more white people than African Americans. And there's more white people than Latinos. So how can the population be predominantly white? But 90% of the people that you stop is African American or Latino, right? When it was the Paddy rollers, 100% were African, people of African descent. It's the exact same thing. The exact same thing. Long live Trayvon Martin. May his name live on forever and may his memory never die. Hey, big facts. Big facts. Fell victim to some of this type of nonsense. Look, there's more whites than blacks in New York City, right? The city's population in 2020 was 30.9% white, 28.7% Hispanic or Latino, 20.2% black or African American. So there's more white non-Hispanics than any other racial group in New York City. But I just showed you in 2017, 90% of the people that they stopped was African American. Why? Because the police department it is infiltrated, quote unquote, or began with white supremacist groups. White supremacist groups who have their origins in slave patrols. They have always been targeting one racial group more than the other. This is just how they have operated. It's just under different names in these modern times. So now check this out. We're going to look at it by the numbers. So y'all see it's more whites than blacks and Mexicans in New York. But when we look at the data for the stop and frisks, these slave patrols, these Paddy rollers, look, in 2003, 160,851 NYPD stops were recorded. 77,705 were black, 44,586 for Latino, and 17,623 were white, 12%. So 54% were black, 31% were white, 12% was white. Now it's more whites than blacks. So why would you have a police force? Think about it. Why would you have a police force with white supremacists in the police force stopping and quote unquote chatting with and frisking non-whites more than the whites? Why? Because they the slave patrols and the goddamn Paddy rollers. Look, in 2004, consistent 55% of those stopped were black, 32% were Latino, and only 10% was white. There's more whites than blacks. Look at the numbers. 155,033 were black, 89,937 were Latino, and only 28,913 were white. Isn't it obvious who they targeted? Year after year after year. Look, 2005, 196,570 were black, who they stopped and frisked. 115,088 were Latino, and only 40,713 were white. That's, man, it's over 150,000 more blacks were stopped and chatted with. 54% black, 32% Latino, 11% white. Year after year after year after year. Let's look at 2006. Let's see if it changed. 267,468 blacks, 147,862 Latinos, 53,500 were white. Over 200,000 more blacks were stopped and frisked than whites. The slave patrollers and the Paddy rollers. 2007, 243,766 black, 141,868 Latino, 52,887 were white. This is why people were complaining. They were saying that these stops were racially motivated. What they were doing when they just seen somebody that was black, they would stop them, demand to see they ID, ask them where they going, ask them where they coming from, pat them down. Damn it, anybody that they saw was black and Mexican. This how they was treating them. You see, the slave patrol is community policing, and the Paddy rollers are the police. 2008 in New York, 275,588 were black, 53%. 163,475 were Latino, 32%. Only 57,650 were white, 11%. Over 200,000 more blacks were stopped and frisked than whites. And it's more whites than blacks. Even if those numbers were even if they did the same amount of blacks that they did whites, that would even be weird because it's more white people than black people. But why are they targeting the blacks and Latinos? Why? Why is it over 200,000 more blacks year after year after year after year? Why? Because they white supremacist Paddy rollers. And in their mind, they own slave patrol. Look, in 2019, did it change? 310,611 were black. 180,055 were Latino. 53,600 were white. So now it's over 250,000 more were black than white. Look, 55%, again, over half, year after year after year, over half the people in New York, year after year, that they were stopping and frisking were black, over half the people. Why? Because this is what it's about. They on slave patrol. In their mind, they on slave patrol, right? 2010, the same thing, 315,083. I think y'all get it. Just take some time. Look at this. 2010, 54% were black. 2011, 53% were black. 2012, 55% were black. 2013, 56% were black. 2014, 53% were black. 2015, 54% was black. 2016, 2017, the same thing, over and over and over and over again. But I want to show y'all something. Look what happened once you start applying pressure. 2013, looks like the numbers start going back down, but it's still a disparaging amount in the percentages. In 2013, 104,958 were black. 20,877 was white. 55,191 were Latino. Now watch what happens from 2013 to 2014. In 2014, it was only a total recording of 45,787. Now this could be one or two things. Either they felt that fire under them because they were under investigation. People were realizing that they were Paddy rollers on slave patrol, right? And they stopped harassing as many people, or they just stopped reporting it. You get stopped by the cops, you get patted down, you get frisked. They don't tell nobody. They just catch and release, right? But even when the numbers drop in 2014 of the total number of stops recorded, you still have 53% being black. 24,319 were black, 12,489 were Latino, and only 5,467 were white. So even when they lower the amount of people that they recorded and that they stopped, you still see over half, like clockwork, is black. 2015, 54% black. 2016, 52% black. 2017, 57% black. 2018, 57% black. 2009, you get the picture. You get the picture, right? You get the picture. All the way through to 2023, last year, 59% black, meaning it has been consistent from the beginning all the way to the end. Now, what I want to explain to you guys is this isn't something that just happens in New York. I guarantee it's going on in your city too. You just may have never looked at the numbers. You just may have never looked at the numbers. Now, I have a book out, right? Y'all see I call myself the real bookworm. I call myself the real bookworm for a reason. Not only do I read a lot, I write a lot. I have 16 published works out currently. Now, I have one book out, Big Game Hunting, which documents me and my brother Joshua Daniels, aka Court Figure. Shout out to Court Figure TV News Network. They've been striking down his channel, striking down his channels to keep that real information from getting out. But he's still fighting a good fight. Now, in our hometown of Texas City, Texas, we dealt with the exact same thing. Now, when we first started dealing with corrupt police, we didn't know about community policing. We weren't connecting it with slave patrols and paddy rollers. All we really knew was that the police were out of control. Like the facts on the ground was that the police were out of control. That's all we knew. And so we started fighting corrupt police. And as we fought the corrupt police, and as I did my research, and as I looked at the numbers, and as I dug deep, I realized exactly what was going on. And I guarantee in your city, wherever you're from, I guarantee that someone's trying to push in your police department a concept of community policing. And if they're not doing it now, they did it before. And if they haven't done it before, they're going to try to do it soon. It's coming to a city near you. And if you look at the numbers, those numbers are going to look just like those numbers did in New York, because that's exactly how the numbers looked in Texas City, Texas. And so I documented the fight that me and my brother had against the slave patrollers, quote unquote, community policing, and the paddy rollers, aka Texas City Police Department. I documented our fight all in this book, and I put all of the evidence on record. And to date, none of the people that I have named have ever come out and denied one thing that I said, because they know that it's all true. I accused them of everything. I accused them of being corrupt. I accused them of being racist. I accused them of being sexually assaulting other officers, right? I put it all on the line. I named police chiefs. I named mayors. I named city commissioners. I named lawyers, right? I put all of their arrest records out there. I used newspaper articles. I used emails. I used court records. I used arrest records. I did everything that I needed to do to prove what I was saying without them trying to arrest me for harassment or slander or defamation of character. Because that's the first thing that they're going to try to do. They're going to try to discredit you. But I left them no room to discredit me in my work, Big Game Hunting. Now, anybody that's interested, you can get the book, Big Game Hunting. You can order it on Amazon. It's doing great, and it has been doing great for a while. You can see that I almost have a total 5-star rating, but I have a 4.3 star rating right now. The only reason why it's probably not 5 is probably because some cops done went in there and gave me a 1-star rating or a 0-star rating, just because they name in the book. But it is what it is. But you can go and order this. It's there for the world to see. I'm not hiding nothing. I'm not hiding my hand. When I say that slave patrols is community policing and the paddy rollers are the police, I mean exactly what I'm saying. And I'm not just saying it online. I said it in the community. I said it at public meetings. I said it to their face. And I put pen to paper. Now look, check this out. In the book, I highlight a march. Hold on just a second. L Bigfoot say, I remember Juvenile, a song back in the day about Tuesdays and Thursdays. Oh yeah, the jump out boys. For real. So look, in the book, Big Game Hunting by Matthew Daniels, shout out to Court Figure. Mama, I finally made it. I highlight, at one point we led a march on the Texas City Police Department, my local police department, for the exact thing that I just showed you that was going on in New York. The disparaging numbers. Whereas there are more Europeans in Texas City than African Americans. but it seemed like the African Americans were being targeted when I looked at their racial profiling reports. And since I did this, they changed the information that they make available online pertaining to their racial profiling report because they don't want people like me being able to expose them. But a story ran in the newspaper about the march, and the title was "Marching on Texas City Police Department Because Numbers Don't Lie." Now, I wrote this. It says, have you ever heard the phrase, people lie, but numbers don't? Well, that saying does have place in society, especially in our micro society of Texas City. In 2013, there were 5,077 Caucasian males encountered by the Texas City Police Department, according to the police department's 2013 racial profiling report. Out of the 5,077, 590 of those encountered led to an actual arrest. In the same year, there were 2,219 African American males encountered by the TCPD. Out of those 2,219, 626 of those encounters led to an actual arrest. How is it that more than double the amount of Caucasians were encountered, but there were more African Americans arrested? Why? Because they were seeking to arrest the African Americans. And so I put all of the numbers out there, and they ran an article about it in the newspaper. And I even put it in the book. If you were to get the book, Big Game Hunting by Matthew Daniels, chapter 9, is titled "Leading a March Against the Texas City Police Department, Bringing the Fight to Them." Okay, and we were marching because numbers don't lie. And we led a march from City Hall all the way down to the Texas City Police Department, and we stood in front of the police department with our signs protesting their Paddy roller tendencies and their slave patrol tendencies. Now, look, in the book, I highlight exactly how their community policing is nothing more than slave patrol, just under a different name. Now, right here, I quoted an article that was ran in the Texas City Sun. Now, this is what our then chief of police had to say when talking about his community policing initiative. And it was the community policing initiative that we were fighting. He said, "We are dealing with quality of life issues. Those issues can be concerns of speeding in a neighborhood, loud music, or people hanging out who have no business there," said Burby. Now, look at what he says. Some of the key things that his community policing is focused on, he told on himself, is people hanging out who have no business there. Remember the Paddy voters and the slave patrols. If you were quote unquote in an area that they didn't think you had business being in, they would question you, search you, punish you, and take you back to the plantation that you belong to. Right? Now, hanging out is not illegal. Okay? Let me say it again. Hanging out is not illegal. So why would a cop be concerned with people hanging out? Now, a quote unquote cop shouldn't be concerned with people hanging out, but a Paddy roller would be. Right? Now this scene, all you got to do is substitute the horses for patrol cars and the whip for a gun or a taser, and this scene you see it all of the time. Now look what I say in the book when addressing Burby's hanging out comment. I say, now ask yourself this, and I want you guys to ask yourself this: how would the police know if you belong in the area that you are hanging out in unless they detain you for no reason, run your name, and question you about where you're going and where you've been? This man, Chief Burby, is literally talking about bypassing probable cause and harassing the community simply because the cop wants to do so. This is illegal, dear reader. It is a violation of your constitutional rights. They dress it up with pretty words like community policing and stop and chat. So right here, what Chief Burby said that one of his issues is people hanging out who have no business there. I want you to ask yourself, how would the cops know that you're hanging out in an area that you shouldn't be hanging out in? How, like, would they just know? Are they psychic? Are they clairvoyant? Can they read your mind? How would they know? The only way they would know is the same way the Paddy rollers would know. They have to detain you. They have to question you. They have to ask for paperwork and documentation like your ID. And in order to know if you're not supposed to be there, they have to question, where are you from? Where do you live? That's the only way they would know that if I'm in a place where I'm not supposed to be. And how do they make the determination that I'm in a place where I'm not supposed to be? How do you know this? How do you know where me, a grown man, a grown woman, how do you know where I'm supposed to be? I'm not breaking any laws. I'm not a suspect in a crime. Nobody reported a crime being committed. You just see, think about it. You're a cop, you're riding down the street, you just see somebody, quite often African-American or Latino. You just see them. And then to ascertain if they're somewhere they shouldn't be, you stop and chat with them. You detain them illegally and you pat them down and you search them. And without a warrant, without probable cause, without investigating a crime. Right? So to initiate this, the cop has to racially profile you. They have to circumvent probable cause because they don't know what's going on yet. They have to just see somebody and suspect without any reasoning that they shouldn't be here and then address them. That's not how policing works. You respond to a crime. I have to be a suspect. I have to be doing something that I'm not supposed to be doing for you to even detain me in the first place. And so with this translated to in the streets, is individuals would just be walking down the street. The cops would see them. The cops would stop them. Hey, show me your ID. How many times did that happen to you? Show me your ID. Put your hands on the hood of the car. You got any weapons that I need to know about? You got any drugs that I need to know about? Hey, where are you from? And if they are part of this community policing, those particular cops, they feel like they know you. Hey, man, I always see you on 7th. Don't I always see you on 7th Avenue? What you doing over here on 13th? Ain't that how they talk? We all know. Hey, wait a minute. Wait, your driver's license say you from Texas City. What you doing down here in Galveston? Oh, man, I just came out here to see my brother. Well, where your brother live? What's your brother's name? You understand what I'm saying? Oh, I came out here to see some girl, like the individual from the slave now. I came to see, what girl you coming out? Your girlfriend? Your wife? You came to see some girl? Where she live? How long you knew her? Are you on your way to her house? Are you leaving her house? Oh, so she stay over there on Broadway? Oh, okay. Then they make a determination based on your answers if you should be punished or not. And a lot of times this ended up with a person being beat and taken to jail. Now, when we were saying this, individuals acted like they couldn't comprehend what we were telling them. So we had to fight this fight for several years straight before the community policing Paddy rollers who were operating under the Operation Crackdown 2 organized by Chief Burby. This slave patrol that was created, Operation Crackdown 2. Before me and my brother, Court Figure TV, shout out to him, before we broke that slave patrol up, we had to fight it for several years because people acted like they couldn't understand what we were talking about. And a lot of times, you got to think about it, a lot of times the Paddy rollers and the people who carried out these slave patrols, they were vile human beings anyway. They were out for blood anyway. They were already white supremacists. So they were more inclined to beat the individuals and mistreat the individuals that they were stopping. And so a lot of times these cops, especially what I highlighted here in Texas City, They were the criminals. I showed them being accused of every crime. I showed police chiefs being accused of illegal arms deals. I saw mayors being accused of crimes. Cops being accused of crimes. Sexual assault, rape, right? Illegal arms deals. Prostitution, assault, theft, robbery. I showed it all. So if you have criminals with the ability to violate the Constitution of the public, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to become heavy-handed. They're going to become heavy-handed, and they're going to abuse the people that are under them. Look. Remember, I showed you guys this slide. The statute modeled on South Carolina's earlier patrol laws ordered white adults to ride the roads at night, stopping all enslaved laborers they encountered and making them prove that they were engaged in lawful activity. So the paddy rollers and the slave patrollers just saw somebody, and based on the color of their skin, they stopped them. And they said, hey, you need to prove that you have some right to be out here. Right? What did Burby say? People hanging out who have no business there. So cops just riding around and they see somebody and they stop them and they get out. Put your hands on the hood of the car. Now, prove to me that you have a legal right to be in this neighborhood. Is that not paddy rollers and slave patrollers, family? Am I reaching? Am I reaching, or am I pulling back the veil? Am I reaching, or am I pulling back the veil? People hanging out who have no business there. They was ordered to stop all enslaved laborers they encountered and making them prove that they were engaged in lawful activities. Community policing, stop and frisk, stop and chat is what it was called in Texas City, stop and chat. You have to prove that you're engaged in lawful activities. Slave patrols are, community policing and paddy rollers are the police officers. Look, and this is just the image of the paddy rollers looking at the paperwork of this enslaved individual. That might as well be his license and insurance that they looking at. They got the light. Look, he holding up a lantern. I know it's kind of blurry, but look, he holding up a lantern. He got his flashlight out. How many times they put the flashlight in your face? Right? Show me your paperwork. What are you doing here? Show me your ID. Oh, you ain't got no ID? Oh, you're going to be here a little bit longer. You're going to be here a little bit longer. And they can do anything to you. Those cops can do anything to you. Even kill you and get away with it. Even kill you and get away with it. Look what Burby says. This is what I highlight in the book. The officers will know people, this community policing. The officers will know people, and they will know whose brother is who and whose cousin is who, so forth, he said. We want to stop as many crimes we can before they happen. This is Burby talking, Chief Burby, ex-chief. And you would be surprised how many things we walk up to when we're into the neighborhood. We stop a lot of crime that way. How the hell do you know you stopping crime if a crime ain't been committed? You assuming that this person is going to commit a crime. Look, a key to that plan will be allowing officers to get out of their patrol cars and talk to people. Allow the officers to illegally, unconstitutionally detain you. Allow officers to, without a warrant, search you. Let me tell you, I don't want officers to get out of their patrol cars and talking to me. Talk to me about what? Talk to me about what? They don't never get out and talk to you and ask you, do you need a few dollars? Do you need a ride somewhere? Hell no. They want to know who you are, where you been, where you coming from, where you going. A key to that plan, he told on himself, a key to that plan will be allowing officers to get out of their patrol cars and talk to people. What plan? He's talking about preventing crime. So he thinks in order to prevent crime, they have to be able to violate your constitutional rights, right? Just like what they thought during the slavery days. Ordering white adults to ride the roads at night, stopping chat, stopping frisk, stopping all enslaved laborers they encountered and making them prove that they were engaged in lawful activities. This is how they felt like they could stop crime. And the crime was you trying to escape, stop you from escaping, to stop and frisk you, stop and chat you. The exact same thing that these officers are saying. Look, and this is why I say coming to a city near you. Burby speaks as a man with experience in that type of police work. As an officer in Marietta, Georgia, the former Air Force Staff Sergeant worked on one of these city's toughest neighborhoods. I went on to show that the chief of police in Texas City have been involved in this community policing program in several other cities and states. That's how I know if you do the research, you're going to find a community policing program where you're at. You just probably never looked for it before. But if you look, you're going to find it. Just like there was multiple slave patrols and paddy rollers in various counties. This community policing is widespread. So, but again, my fight with this is documented in the book Big Game Hunting by Matthew Daniels. Anyone can go find this on Amazon, and you can see me break down exactly how it unfolded in Texas City, and you can see how me and my brother Joshua Daniels, aka Court Figure, brought them to their knees. We wasn't having it where we was at, and you can get it on Amazon for $19.99. Or, you can reach out to me directly if you want a signed copy. Just let me in the comments or something, and we can discuss it. You say I put all of the information on it in there. So, slave patrol and community policing, paddy rollers, and police officers. I hope by the end of this, you realize exactly what I mean. You have to understand that the slave patrol is community policing, and the paddy rollers are the police officers. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing, and it has the exact same results. Real quick, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button. I'm trying to build the channel, blow the channel up as best I can with this information about what our ancestors had to endure, and make that information relevant to us today. So if you can, like the video, share it if you can on some of the social media platforms, and also if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Now, if you've already subscribed and you've already hit that notification bell, they've been doing some real funny things with my YouTube for years now. You may want to go back and check and make sure that notification bell is still checked, because they have been taking it off of some of my subscribers, and they don't even know when I'm going live, and they don't know when I post new content. So you may want to go and make sure that bell is still checked on your side, so you can keep up with the information, and you can follow me a little better. Also, if anybody wants to donate to the channel, donate to what we got going on, the Cash App is going on along the bottom of the screen. If you want to order the book, you can go to Amazon.com, look up Big Game Hunting by Matthew Daniels, and you can order that book. I promise you will not be disappointed. That book has reaped and is wreaking all kind of hell right here in my hometown of Texas, Galveston County. So I hope now you have a better understanding of what slave patrols are. I hope you have a better understanding of what paddy rollers are. And I want you to understand that some of the same stuff that our ancestors were enduring back during the time of slavery, we are enduring it right now today. It is just under a different name. So thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Right? Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for all of the support. Everybody that has supported, that has been supporting, I really do appreciate it. It means the world to me. I'm your brother, Matthew Daniels, a.k.a. I'm Pooh, a.k.a. The Chosen Few, a.k.a. The Real Bookworm. I'm not just a bookworm, world. I am the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. I'm doing the book game like it ain't never been done before, and I'm doing the book game like it'll probably never be done again. Y'all kids, you more than welcome, and thank you for all of the support, man. I appreciate you just like you appreciate me. Hotep L Bigfoot, Hotep to everybody that's still in the chat. Hey, we're gonna make intelligence great again. Read a book, man. Read a book.